Hello, so today's video we are going to talk about chick lit, judging a book by its cover, and women's fiction as a genre, I guess. This video is kind of a product of multiple things happening over the past few days or week that just led me to have a lot to say on this topic. So first of all, I'm reading all of Liane Moriarty's books right now and really enjoying them, so I'm speeding through them. While I was browsing her books on the Libby app, I was like, well, I'm really glad I had read some of her books before, or I'm not sure that I would have picked her books based on the covers, because they kind of look like romance books. Just as an explanation, I absolutely hate reading romance. Then I thought, I wonder how many authors I've been missing out on for this reason. And so I thought I'll have a section in my video that I make about reading all of these books that it talks about that. Then the second kind of major thing was that I was on Bookstagram and I saw someone that I follow review My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, and she, like many reviewers that I've seen before, discussed how much she loved the book but absolutely loathed the cover and almost didn't read it because of the cover. If you look on Instagram or Goodreads, you will see so many reviews that say the same thing. I knew I had seen an article a few months ago about the covers of these books, and so I pretty much immediately started Googling and jotting down thoughts, and I went kind of down a rabbit hole, and I was like, I definitely need to make a whole video on this because I'm going to have way too much to say. So first of all, let's look at Elena Ferrante. So I hope I'm saying that right. So if you're not familiar, she is a well-known literary author of unknown actual identity, whose most famous works is this series, the Neapolitan novels. There's 4. I have only read this one. I loved it. Fully intend to read the rest of them. But all of the covers feature these old photographs. I'll put the rest on the front, that are kind of often described as like tacky or trashy. They're just kind of gaudy. I had stumbled across an article, like I said, that explained that these photographs were a very intentional choice. According to the publisher, they looked for pictures that were kind of vulgar or kitsch to stay true to the storyline, and the publisher said that the author agreed with this choice and was fully on board. They were apparently extremely surprised by the vehement negative response that they got, and the publisher is quoted to say, "We also had the feeling that many people didn't understand the game we were playing, that of, let's say, dressing an extremely refined story with a touch of vulgarity." I really like that idea. I kind of like the idea of being like a modern classic kind of in disguise. Personally, I don't hate these covers. I am not drawn to them, but I also don't really care. I think also I just have had so many bad editions of books that I just don't really care that much about covers, but definitely people have a visceral reaction to these covers, and in general it's not good. The global internet uproar over these covers really kind of drove home to me that people really choose books by their covers, and if you look like women's fiction or chick lit or a romance, it is not good. So I started to kind of look into what it actually meant to be chick lit. A chick lit enthusiast on Book Riot explained the genre this way: it's about women, it's usually fresh, contemporary, and it's a genre that keeps itself on its toes. It'll take you on an emotional roller coaster and usually leaves you feeling warm and fuzzy inside. While Wikipedia less enthusiastically described it as a term widely used in the 1990s and early 2000s to describe popular fiction targeted at younger women. The term's usage has declined since the late 2000s as writers and critics have rejected its inherent sexism. So there doesn't seem to be a solid definition of this genre or description, because many of the people and books that I know that I've seen described as chick lit, I wouldn't necessarily say or leave you warm and fuzzy on the inside. I do think that there's generally a bit of a positive lift to it. Things generally end up okay for people at least, but I do think that kind of the popular fiction aimed at women is probably a better description, but then you end up including a lot of people that I'm not sure would want to be classified as chick lit. So I kind of just started Googling author names with chick lit to see if they were being described that way. Liane Moriarty is described that way, but she was also quoted as saying that she thought the description should be eliminated, that it's particularly ridiculous to consider women's fiction to be a subcategory when women in fact read far more fiction than men. Then I came to an illustrious blog post from 2018 on the William Peace blog. In case you're unfamiliar like I was, William Peace is apparently a professional author who has actually genuinely impressively been blogging for a long-ass time. But he had this to say about Liane Moriarty and chick lit. It seems to me that if Ms. Moriarty doesn't like her work to be called chick lit, she should change her subject matter and style, or she should invent a new name for her genre, something like good women's. It certainly doesn't classify as literary fiction. To argue, in effect, that the chick lit genre should be deleted because women read more fiction than men, while it's true that women read more, doesn't make sense. How are we going to distinguish serious female writers like Kate Atkinson from writers like Helen Fielding? Now, I have to say this with full snark. You might try reading them like we do all the time with everything else. Do we have a separate frivolous category for male authors to tell you who to take seriously and who not to? No, we just read them and decide if we like them. Maybe we read some reviews first if we don't want to waste our time on something that we're not interested in reading. But why does this grown-ass man need someone to tell him what female authors to take seriously or not? I just can't even fathom the idea of needing some kind of dismissive identifier. I also take issue with the idea of serious writers versus non-serious writers in general, particularly since this does seem to only apply to female authors. Of course, there are authors that write purely for entertainment purposes. Not everything needs to have a purpose. Not everything needs to be written to fulfill some greater social, cultural, or artistic purpose. Sometimes people just need something entertaining to read, and there's nothing wrong with that. But typically, anything written about women or by women is written off as emotional or sappy or frivolous, as if emotional things are automatically frivolous, or as if women always write emotional things. It's the idea that when women talk about people, but when men talk, they talk about ideas or whatever that old awful saying is. And I'm just going to be talking about Liane Moriarty here because she is the author that I have the most experience with in this field. Yes, some of her books have a hint of, soapiness to the plots. A lot of dramatic things, interpersonal things happen. And they're all undeniably privileged, which I do think is kind of also a feature of this genre, but they're written perfectly adequately. I have had zero moments cringing over the writing in her books, which is far more than I can say for the literary darling Sally Rooney, which the entire bookish internet will lose their mind if you happen to describe her as chick lit or women's fiction, by the way. But Moriarty's books cover topics like grief, losing children, losing parents, causing harm to someone and dealing with that, finding out that your partner isn't who you thought they were, career problems. Are these women's experiences? Do only non-men fall in love or lose their parents or lose a child? If you think about it, literary authors of all genders write about these things as well. Ian McEwan writes romance without really doing anything unprecedented with the English language, in my opinion. I've never read Call Me By Your Name, but I'm willing to bet that if you wrapped it in a cutesy Italian village cover and said that it was by Andrea Osimon and put it on the chick lit shelf, that none of you would have read it. Private Life by Jane Smiley is entirely about one woman's marriage and domestic life, and I thought that that was an incredible and important work, and I think Jane Smiley is generally taken pretty seriously as a female author. Just because you write about relationships or people or domestic life doesn't mean that it's something that is frivolous or that only women should be interested in it. Regardless of what women write about, they still aren't read by men. According to this Guardian article, for the top 10 best-selling female authors, including literary icons like Jane Austen and Margaret Atwood, only 19% of their readers are male. In contrast, the top 10 men on the list had 45% female readership. So I think we're all fairly familiar with this concept, but women will read men, men will not read women. Now this leads me to my wrap-up theory, which is that men only read men in general, or they might make some exception for some, but then women in the book community, we're all just kind of I'm not like other girls-ing our way through and following suit. And we're potentially missing out on good books because of this, because publishers chose to make their covers all sugar and spice and everything nice. And I have completely been guilty of this as well. I'm not sure whether it gives me more or less authority to talk on this subject that I'm also not a reader of chick lit. I will put a stop to that now and start not automatically writing things off from the cover. I'm still not going to read romance. I just can't. My secondhand embarrassment just can't even handle it. But I'm going to try to be way more open to popular fiction written by women, because I do think that it's a combination of snobbery and misogyny that has gotten us here to this point where we think that any popular author who's a woman is writing something that is not worthy of being read by most of us. So what do you guys think? Are you someone who has read popular fiction and knows that it's just not for you? Or do you think that maybe you, like I have maybe fallen into this I'm not like other girls, I read serious literary fiction thing, which I do, and I'm not going to stop doing that, but I also think that maybe we've been missing out. I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.